Alright, presented here is the tune All the Things You Are. What we want to do is we want to analyze the tune. We want to see where all the chords come from. In other words, like what key the chords come from. Even though in this course we are going to focus in on chord tone soloing, it is important to know where the chords come from as far as what key they belong in and what scale you could play over every chord. Because, you know, the chord is like, let's say, the tree, and the leaves are, say, the scales on the tree, if you will, you know, the extensions. You know, the tree is what holds everything up. The tree holds up the leaves and the fruit, and when the birds, you know, they need a place to perch, right? Okay, so enough about that. So, all right, the first thing that you want to do is you want to find the dominant chord. So the first dominant chord that appears in the tune is this E flat 7, right? Why is it that's the first chord we want to look at? Well, oftentimes the dominant chord is the primary dominant chord. There are things such as secondary dominants, and we'll talk about that. But most of the dominant chords, generally speaking, are going to be functioning primary dominant chords, and they'll be the fifth chord in the harmonized scale. So, for example, if we pull up the key of A flat major, okay, and the 5 chord is E flat 7 right here. Alrighty, so like I say, the first thing we want to identify is the dominant chord. Now, I just remembered why I came back here. So when we look at the harmonized chord scale, right, how many dominant chords are in the harmonized chord scale? Only one. Okay? And it's at the 5th degree. Now, there's only one minor 7 flat 5 as well, and that's at the 7th degree. But there's only one dominant chord, and you know, oftentimes in these types of tunes you're going to have a bunch of what's called 2-5-1 progressions. So if we can identify that dominant chord, because there's only one dominant chord within the harmonized scale, then we can identify the 1 chord and the 2 chord and so forth. So let's go back here. So we have this E flat 7. Okay, so the next thing to do, once you've found the dominant chord, you want to look to the right and see if you have a major 7 chord, and we do. And we also want to see if that note is a perfect 4th away. Okay, a perfect 4th degree is 5 half steps, by the way. And you should have memorized by now the cycle of perfect fourths: C, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, B, E, A, D, G. You want to have that memorized. Anyway, so we want to see if the root notes are a perfect 4th away. Check, they are. And to the right of the dominant, we have a major 7. We do. So this is a 5-1 progression right here. Okay, so now we want to see if the 2 is on the left side. So we look to the left side of the dominant. Is it minor 7? Yes. Is that root note a perfect 4th away from the 5 chord? Yes. B flat to E flat. So what we have identified is a 2-5-1. Okay, from there we can look and see what's around this 2-5-1. So if we go to before the 2 chord, right, we've got an F minor. Well, how is F minor functioning? Okay, if we look at the harmonized chord scale of A flat major, now why A flat major? Because we just identified that we're in the key of A flat, right? Because we know this is the 5, this is a dominant chord. What's the 1? A flat. So that is the parent key that we're in, A flat major. And if we draw out the A flat major harmonized chord scale, this is what we come up with, these chords. Okay? So the question was asked, well, what is F minor? Well, F minor is the 6th chord. Okay, now watch this. If we're on 6 and we move forward, like I was talking about earlier, 1, 2, 3, 4. Look at that, B flat minor, right? F minor 7, B flat minor 7. Okay, and if we move forward, we would see that we would be at E flat 7. If we move 4 degrees again, we'd be at A flat major 7. All right, after A flat major 7, we've got a D flat major 7. I wonder if you can guess what that is. If we move 4 degrees, 1, move 4 degrees, we're at the 4 chord, D flat major 7. Is that true? All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, D flat major 7. Okay, so after that, okay, we have G7. Now, if we're at D flat major 7, all right, and we move 4 degrees, 1, 2, 3, 4, we're not at G dominant 7, we're at G minor 7 flat 5. Okay, well, this right here is a way that composers modulate tunes, and that is you can take a chord that should be there, in this case it should be G minor 7 flat 5, and you can change that to a different chord type. So in this case the composer says, well, I'm going to change that to a dominant chord, okay, and that is going to be a gateway, and it was going to be a way to allow me to modulate to a new key. Right, and here we have a 5 to 1 in the key of C major. All right, so you know, if we go back to C major and we find there's G7, and look at this, if we move 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, C major. Okay, so we have a 5 to 1 in the key of C. All right, so after that we've got C minor. Now we know that C minor is not in the key of C major, but again, this is a way that composers change keys, modulate keys, is to take a chord that would be there and change the chord type. So we went from sweet to sour, as it were. We went from C major to C minor. Now when we look at the harmonized chord scale, we notice that we have minor chords off the 2, the 3, and the 6. So now we got to determine, well, is that a 2 chord? Is that a 3 chord? Is that a 6 chord from a particular key? Because this C minor, if it were by itself, could be from like 3 different keys. It could be the 2 chord of a particular key, a 3 chord, or a 6 chord of a particular key. But as we go forward through the tune and look at the other chords, we'll find out exactly where this is coming from. If we move ahead to the dominant chord, right, because we're going to look for a 2-5-1, and we want to know, is this a 2-5-1 progression that we're looking at? Well, we use those rules I talked about, which is, well, we look to the right of the dominant chord. Is it major 7? Yes, check. Is the root note a perfect fourth away? Yes. B flat to E flat is a perfect fourth away. Now we look to the left. Is that a minor 7 chord to the left? Yes, check. Is the root note of that minor 7 a perfect fourth away from the root note of the dominant? Yes, check. So here we have a 2-5-1 from what key? E flat major. Okay, and then we can start to identify, how the other chords are functioning. Okay, so if we're in the key of E flat, right? So I'm going to go over here to E flat. This is E flat major, the harmonized chord scale of E flat major. Okay. So we want to find out how is C minor functioning in the key of E flat major? All right, well, when we go back here, C minor is the 6th chord. And guess what? If you move 4 from 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, we're on F minor. Come back here, F minor. If we move 4, we're on B flat 7. If we move 4, we're on E flat major 7. If we move 4, we're on A flat major 7, and that's the 4 chord of E flat major. And if we move 4, we're on D minor 7 flat 5, but that's not what we have here. We have a D dominant 7. So this is where the composer says, you know what? I'm tired of being in E flat. I want to modulate away from E flat. A way to do that is I can keep the D note here, but I'm going to change the chord type. Instead of a minor 7 flat 5, I'm going to make it dominant, and that's going to be my 5. And that's going to allow me to transition to modulate to a new key. And now I'm going to be in the key of G. This is a 5 to 1 in the key of G major. All right, and if we lay out the key of G major, we would see, all right, let's go here. Here's the key of G major. We got G major 7, A minor 7, B minor 7, C major 7's the 4, and so forth, right? So what we have following this is A minor 7, D7, G major 7. Guess what? This is a 2, 5, 1. We use our method. We find the dominant 7. We look to the right of it. Is it major? Yes. We look to the left. Is it minor? Yes. Are the root notes going in a perfect fourth fashion? Yes. A, perfect fourth from A is D. A perfect fourth from D is G. Here we have a 2, 5, 1 in the key of G. Okay. Now, after that we have an F sharp minor. Now, is F sharp minor in the key of G? Well, let's have a look. All right. We've got an F sharp minor 7 flat 5. So we can tell the composer says, you know what? I want to modulate away from G major. How can I do that? I can change the chord type. So instead of using F sharp minor 7 flat 5, he just used F sharp minor 7. So that F sharp minor 7 by itself, it could be the 2 chord of a particular key, a 3, or a 6 chord from a particular key, because we know in the harmonized chord scale we have minor 7 off the 2, the 3, and the 6. So how is that functioning here? So we would find out that that is the 2 chord from the key of E major. Because if we go to the dominant, there's our dominant, right? And we use our rules, we would find out, boom, we've got a 2, 5, 1 in the key of E. So after that we have a C7 sharp 5. Now, here is a place where we're not moving in like a 4th degree away. You know, if we look in the key of E major, right? Let's go to E major here. Okay, here's E major. We see that E major has a C sharp, right? So, you know, this is just another compositional tool. Okay, so how, you know, where does this C7 sharp 5 come from? Well, one way to look at it is this. There is a concept called a tritone substitution. Now, a tritone, that interval, the tritone, is 3 whole steps. Tri means 3, tone is whole steps. You know, the British way of talking about half steps and whole steps, they say semitone and tone. Semitone is a half step, tone is a whole step. Anyway, so tritone means 3 whole steps. And one compositional technique is to substitute a chord that's a tritone away. So if we think about a 2-5-1 progression that just loops over and over again, 2-5-1, 2-5-1, that instead of going back to F sharp minor, you know, looping back to F sharp minor, which is the 2, what's the tritone? What's 3 whole steps away from F sharp? You would find out it is C. Okay, so he could have used like a C minor 7 as a substitution. Instead of going back to F sharp minor, he could have went to C minor. All right, and on top of that, instead of using minor like the 2 chord, he's using dominant 7. Okay, that's one way to think about this C7 sharp 5. A better way, in my opinion, is to look past the C7 sharp 5 and see what happens afterward. And then we can come back to the C7 and see how it comes into play. So if we look after this C7 sharp 5, we have F minor 7, B flat minor 7. Where's our dominant? It's right here. Okay, so we use our rules to find out, is this a primary 5 chord? And it is. Okay, and around this dominant chord we have a 2, 5, 1 in the key of A flat. In fact, this right here is the same as what happened earlier. Okay, so we would find out this is a 6, 2, 5, 1, 4 from the key of A flat. All right, now that we know all that, let's go back to that C7 sharp 5. Okay, so if we're in the key of A flat, all right, how does C function in the key of A flat? Well, it's the 3 chord, but it's C minor, right? And check this out. If we're on C minor and we move 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, we're at F minor. C7 sharp 5 to F minor. So what I'd like to think about this is that it is a secondary dominant instead of a primary dominant, like this E flat 7 is a primary dominant, the G7 primary dominant, B flat 7, and so forth. This is what I would call a secondary dominant because it's not the primary dominant, and it's when a composer changes the chord type. You know, let's say if it's would be a minor 7, if that's what would typically go there, which, you know, C minor 7, you know, might go there, and then it would go, you know, C minor 7 3 chord to an F minor 7 6 chord. But he changed it to a dominant 7, and so we have a secondary dominant 3 chord. It's like a substitution. You know, when we change a chord to a dominant chord, it gives a stronger pull, a cadence, if you will, to the next chord. And you might be saying, okay, but what about this sharp 5? Is that any significance? And I would say yes, because we would find out that the sharp 5 related to the C7, that's a G sharp. And we know that G sharp is inharmonic to A flat. What is A flat? Well, A flat is the third, the minor third of F minor. And if you know anything about guide tones, you know that the thirds and the sevenths, those are like the pillars of the chords. Okay, those are like the strong, you know, intervals, the thirds and the sevenths. So he said, you know, okay, I'm going to make this a secondary dominant, and I'm going to put this sharp 5 in there, that G sharp in that chord, and that's going to be kind of like a connective glue to the following chord, you know, because this sharp 5 turns into the third, a guide tone, if you will, of the next chord, F minor. So that's another like compositional tool or technique. So we have a secondary dominant 3 chord, okay, going to 6, 2, 5, 1, 4. Now I want to go back again to the C7 sharp 5. So what scale would we, you know, what scale would we play over this C7 sharp 5? Well, think about what would normally go there. What would normally go there is a C minor 7. Okay, and over a C minor 7, how does that function? Well, the C minor 7 functions as the 3 chord. What's the third mode? The third mode is Phrygian. So a good scale choice to play over that is not Phrygian, but Phrygian major. Okay, we know that. We know that Phrygian. Okay, I'm going to mess up my diagram here, but the Phrygian mode, you know, it looks like this, right? So what's the difference between a C minor 7 and a C dominant 7th chord? Well, if you know anything about the chords and arpeggios, you know that the dominant chord has a major third. That's the difference. It's the third. Minor 7 has the minor third. The dominant 7 has the major third. So if we know that on a C minor 7 we would play a C Phrygian if it's functioning as a 3 chord, then a C dominant 7 we would raise the third on that C dominant 7 because it's functioning as a secondary dominant what? 3 chord. What's the 3 mode? It's Phrygian. But we've got to accommodate for that major third that is in the dominant 7. Now check this out. What kind of C7 is it? It's a C7 with a what? Sharp 5, and a sharp 5 is in harmonic with the flat 6. It's the same note, if you will. All right, so that C7 sharp 5 has a G sharp, which is the same thing as A flat. Okay, and you could play a C7 sharp 5, or you could play a C7 flat 13. Okay, so anyway, that is the scale that you would use on that C7 sharp 5. Is that the only scale that you can use? No, that's just one. I mean, you can use like C whole tone would be another one. You could use C superlocrian, which is like the 7th mode of melodic minor. So there's other scales that you can use. That's just one of them, and there's even more than what I mentioned here. But okay, so we've got a secondary dominant 3 chord followed by the 6 2 5 1 4 in the key of A flat. Now after that we have D flat minor 7. Now where does that come from? Well, oftentimes a compositional technique used is to borrow from a parallel key, if you will. So this D flat minor 7 is coming from A flat minor, the key of A flat minor. If we go to the key of A flat minor, okay, A flat minor, here we have the A flat minor harmonized scale, and we look at what the 4 chord is. It's D flat minor. All right, now just in case you're kind of lost on like, okay, wait, A flat minor, harmonized, I'm familiar with major. I know another way of describing this is like the A flat Aeolian harmonized chord scale. You know, let's say that what's a good way to think about this, or another way? You know, let's say that, and I just seen that I've got an error here. We've got C major. This should be C flat major. We know that C flat major is the same thing as B major. Okay, and I know C flat sounds weird, but I mean that's what we would use in the case of, you know, A flat minor. But if we took B major and we, you know, renumbered it starting with the G sharp, okay, and we made G sharp 1, which we know that G sharp and A flat is the same thing, and so forth. We renumbered the system. You know, now we have instead of this being the 6th chord, now it's the 1. Instead of this being the 7th chord, now it's the 2, and so forth. Okay, and now that I'm right here with A flat minor, I want to throw this in real quick. You know, besides having 2 5 1 in a major key, there's such a thing as like a 2-5-1 in a minor key. Okay, so that would be like, we would grab the 2 chord from the minor 7 flat 5. Okay, and the 5 chord would be actually E flat dominant 7, not minor. Okay, and then the 1 chord would be A flat minor. That's if we had a 2-5-1 in a minor key. And the 5 chord, I said it's dominant, but we're seeing it's minor right here. Well, that's actually coming from harmonic minor, and that is a whole another topic that we may touch on later in the video. But the reason why we came here is to explain where this D flat minor came from. And again, it's when a composer decides to borrow from a parallel key, and this is also called modal interchange. So we've got a secondary dominant 3 chord, we have 6, 2, 5, 1, 4, and then 4 from the borrowed parallel minor, A flat minor, 4 chord, and then we're back to the 3 chord of A flat major. All right, now we have this B diminished. How is B diminished functioning? Well, remember when we talked about that tritone substitution concept? Well, usually after the 3 chord, if we're moving in degrees of 4 after the 3, we would normally have 6. Watch this. If we go to A flat major, okay, if we go to A flat major and we move 4 degrees, 1, 2, 3, 4, we have F minor, a 6 chord. Okay, but that's not what's right here. We don't have F minor here. We have B diminished. Okay, so then I would say, well, what is a tritone away from F? And we would find out a tritone away from F. I'm going to mess up my diagram here. So if we go a tritone from F, it's B. There's your tritone interval right there. That's 3 whole steps away. Okay, so the composer, instead of using F minor, he used B, and instead of B minor, he used B diminished. Diminished is a very tense sounding chord, and that just gives a stronger pull to the B flat minor, and it's a nice what you call voice leading, because we have this chromatic thing happening here. We've got D flat moving down a half step to C, moving down a half step to B, moving down a half step to B flat minor, as far as the roots go, and that is a compositional technique as well. All right, so we've got 3 and then tritone substitution, B diminished, and that's a tritone sub away from the 6 chord, or a tritone sub of the 6 chord. Okay, and then we have 2, because if we were at the 6 chord, right, and we move 4 degrees, we would be at the 2 chord, and that's what that is, B flat minor. And then we move 4 degrees, we're at the 5, and then we're at 1. Okay, and then we have this C7 sharp 5. Now, if we move 4 degrees from A flat, we would actually be at D flat. So here's an exception here. But I believe the reason why this was used here is because this would take us back to F. And we know that if we're at C and we move 4 degrees, like normally this would be like, say, a C minor 7, and that would be in the key of A flat. But the composer used a dominant 7 sharp 5 to create that tension, and that cycles us back around to F, because if we're at C, let's say that we're C minor, and we would move 4 degrees, we would be to the F minor, right? Let's look at that. So if we're at C, right, 1, whoops, sorry, get out of there. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, see, we're at F minor. So that C7 sharp 5 was used to help us get back to the beginning. So that is how we would analyze all the things you are.